Fredrick Nietzsche, the self-proclaimed antichrist, didn't shy away from talking about Stoicism. As a matter of fact, in his beloved book, Beyond Good and Evil, he attacked Stoicism as a philosophy that claims to live according to nature. In the very first chapter, he declared that the Stoic is a part of nature itself, and therefore you are already living in accordance with nature no matter what you do. Seeing as that's the case, you couldn't live out of accordance with nature if you wanted to. But there's more to say about Stoicism than my shitty interpretation of what Nietzsche said regarding the topic. It just seems impossible to make sense of this philosophy without assuming that the human is in fact outside of nature. Because if you admit that you are part of it all, then you start to run into serious problems. If you're part of nature, then you should accept that pain, suffering, and a lack of indifference is about as close to human nature as it gets. Emotional extremes exist, and are a normal reaction to many life events. There will be many times in your life when you will be controlled by your desires and emotions, and that is an example of you being in accordance with nature, rather than evidence to the contrary. It's starting to seem like the Stoics were attempting to beat or redefine nature rather than live in accordance with it. If you're a Stoic, you might be saying that this isn't what living in accordance with nature means. Living in accordance with nature is the act of accepting whatever life throws at you. Fine, let's just accept that you very conveniently placed yourself outside of nature. At the very least, you have to realize that this is an unrealistic goal. We have brains that were made to feel and notice the difference between what we perceive as good or bad. We think that we can't control our environment, but we can control our mental reactions to it. But as a wise man once said, there's rules to this shit. Yes, you can change the way you think, but becoming indifferent to anything life throws at you is just not gonna happen. You don't have to be a neurologist to understand that both good and bad emotions are hardwired into our brains, and no amount of foreplay with neuroplasticity is likely to change this fact. Outside of the simple holes in this philosophy, they took the luxury of making even more unsubstantiated claims. You will commonly read about Stoics declaring that virtue is sufficient for happiness, but they set the bar so high, and ironically enough, so far from human nature that it becomes impossible to reach. What the Stoic is left with is an unnatural perfectionist ideology that, if not properly controlled, can lead to an unhealthy level of self-criticism. If you feel bad, it's never because you were having a normal reaction to life events. It's always your fault for not living in accordance with nature. And since virtue is all that's needed for a happy life, if you were more virtuous, you wouldn't mind the fact that your mother just died in a car accident. There's a rise in people adopting the Stoic philosophy as a way of life. And of course, much of it is just people trying to find a way to push themselves to be better. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't seem like the best philosophy for most people with depression and anxiety. You know, people that already criticize themselves a lot. I mean, much of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is filled with him trash-talking himself for not being exactly the way he thought he should be. Yet, to be fair, it couldn't have been easy being in charge of the entire fucking Roman Empire, not to mention the fact that he didn't know anyone was going to read those things. But once you get beyond the obvious lie that Stoicism is all about living in accordance with nature, it becomes easier to see this philosophy as something else altogether. A tool that might be useful for some people, yet disastrous for others. But if you wish to live in accordance with Stoicism, just know this. In order to live by this philosophy, you have to either lie to yourself about your relationship with nature and the limits of human emotional control, or be completely ignorant of both of these things. Don't take it from me though. After all, I'm just a rambling idiot on the internet. I may have misconstrued some things or perhaps even everything. Let me know how wrong I am in the comments section, and please be sure to give me your all. I might not reply, but I'll definitely enjoy reading it. If I'm wrong, I'll learn, and if I'm right, maybe someone else will. I'm TheModernApe, and if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to subscribe.